Greetings hobbyists, this is Add Ons of all. In this video we're going to be making a sci-fi energy mace. So we're going to be making a mace that's going to fit into this sci-fi armoured hand. And I just want to mention that the channel does have a Patreon page, and at the moment it is there for anyone at any level of membership. So the lowest level of membership is just $3 and you'll get this hand, and it is one single part, which means you can use it for things like 3D printing, and it is yours to use for whatever purpose you want, as long as you don't resell the hand by itself. If you put something in it, like a weapon, you're more than welcome to use that, put it online, and resell that however you want. Now the other thing I want to mention is there is also a competition on the Patreon page involving this hand. This is only open to the channel patrons, but the competition simply revolves around you putting any object you want in this hand. So it can be a weapon, a banner if you've seen some of the recent videos on the channel where we've looked at tips and tricks for making banners, and there's no cost to entry other than being a member of the Patreon, and if you win, and this will be voted on by the channel patrons, you will win $50. The only provisos of the competition is that your single object that goes in the hand must be a manifold object, so it's 3D printable, and if you win, you're agreeing that your model can be put on the Patreon for people to download and 3D print for their own personal use, and it means that even if you don't win and you're a patron, you get to have the coolest of the competition entries. So with that done, let's have a look at how we're going to make this mace. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to select this handle, which I've put on the file and it's just about the right size for the hand, go into vertex mode, select those end vertices after going in X-ray mode, and then it's just G and then X them so they're a bit longer. I reckon somewhere to about there. We can always fiddle around with that later. And then notice this is quite dense mesh so that we can get this nice smooth rounded shape. I'm going to press Ctrl and R, click that there, go to about here, Ctrl and B just for one segment, and then once again go into X-ray mode, select all those faces, and I'm going to press Alt and E and extrude faces along normals to make sort of a cross guard, or at least the top of where the handle's going to be. And in fact, if this is going to be where the handle's going to be, let's actually Ctrl and R, make another one down here, and then we can, once again in face mode, select all those, and then we'll do that again. So Alt E, and then extrude faces along normals, so we've got those the same width. Somewhere like there, I think looks about right. Now we're going to make the, I don't know what they are, flanges, whatever you'd call them, that goes on the top of the mace. So I'm just going to Shift and A, mesh, and then bring in a new cube, and then let's just move that somewhere here, and then let's make it a bit thinner, so S and then Y to go to somewhere about there. We can always change the thickness later, and then let's S and then X to make it wider this way, and then I'm just going to go into face mode, select that face, and then G and then Z that to probably the thickest I want it. Let's go with there. Again, we can always fiddle around with this later. Now, I don't want this to be quads because it's going to mess up the bevel that we're doing later. So let me just think where I'm going to want this. So what I'm going to do is go into edge mode, select these edges, and then we're going to Ctrl and E, and we're going to subdivide these edges. So we can see that subdivision there. Now we can always do this some more later, but I'm just thinking maybe somewhere there at this point. Yeah, we'll have a look at that for now and see how it works. So let's GG that across there. I'm going to GG that one down for edge slide. Let's go to maybe there. And then I'm going to go into face mode, select both of those. Let's come to side view. Let's go with that one. And G and Z that down. Somewhere about there maybe. No, let's keep it at approximately the same height. If you want this to be exactly the same height, this is quite easy to achieve now. I'm just going to press G and then B. So we've activated snap base. Click on that edge, and then we can still move everything around, but I'm going to press Z to constrain it to the Z axis, and then come over here to that vertex. And now we know that these are exactly the same height. Actually, I think I want one more. In fact, let's just go to this edge, G and then X that a little bit this way to maybe about there, and then still in edge mode, let's select those, Control E and subdivide once more, and then we'll select that edge, GG along, and select that one and GG down a little bit, somewhere about there. So this is going to be the shape of my flange, I think. We'll see how this goes. Yeah, that looks alright. And then we're going to make sure that our scale is applied. At the moment we've scaled this up, so this will cause some problems if we bevel it. So I'm going to Control and A and apply the scale, go into edge mode, and I think we're just going to select these edges here. We could select more of them and have this go all the way down to the haft, but I think I'm okay with that. So Control and B, and we'll go to about there. Now I'm leaving this with some thickness because being an energy weapon, this is actually not really cutting into anything. It's more sort of the power of like the energy field that's doing it, but you could make that sharp if you wanted to. So I think I'm good with something about there. I'm just going to G and then X that a little bit further along. And then we're going to want to make sure that this is going around this weapon. Now, at the moment, I haven't used any add-ons really other than machine tools, so let's keep it that way for most of this. So we'll select this object, and then instead of Shift and D, which would just duplicate it, what I'm going to do is make a linked version of this. So I'm actually going to press Alt and D. You'll see why in a second, because I'll just demonstrate it, but we might need to use it anyway. And then without clicking off, I'm going to press R to rotate around, type in 90, and then I'm just going to Shift and R, Shift and R. So it's kind of a way of making a radial array without actually properly making it. And the thing that I want to do now is I actually want to make this a little bit thinner because I don't want this overlap here. Maybe, actually, I'm going to come back to that. But just remember that we did Alt and D instead of Shift and D, and these objects are now linked. And what that means is that, say for example, I select that vertex and G, it's going to do it to every one of the other ones. So it means we don't, if we change our mind, have to re-edit all of them. So what I think I want is a bit of a wider handle, and this is feeling a little bit short anyway. So what I'm going to do is select all of those, and then just G and then X those a little bit further, and then I'm going to come into face mode here, select that face, then G and then X that a little bit further as well to about there. So now I think we want some more interesting details on this. So we'll come back to our flanges in a second, but it's just got me that this looks too thin. It's fine for the handle, not for the rest of it. So what I'm going to do is Shift and A, Mesh, and then bring in a cylinder. I'm going to up this to, let's say, 128 vertices, R, and then 90, and then just G, and then X that across a bit. S to scale it up. Oh, the transform is still on the 3D cursor, so let's just change that to individual origins. Let's scale that up a bit more there. S and then X. G and then X. And we've got something about there. Will look right. I think that will look good. I'm just going to select the face here, and then just G, and then X that a little bit further out. Cool, happy with that. But I don't want this going all the way along, so we'll cut a section of this out. Several ways of doing this, but what I'm going to do is just bring in a cube. We could use box cutter for this. It'd probably be the easier way to do this, but I'm going to keep this as free of add-ons as we can, or at least the paid for ones. So if anyone does want to join in that competition, they don't feel they need to pay anything extra to be able to do that. Let's go into vertex mode, G, and then Z that down. And I'm just going to select those, and then G, and then X that up that way. Then I'm going to go into edge mode, select that edge, Control and B, and just bevel that and put that up to, I don't know, somewhere like 16. Yep, I think that will look pretty good. So G and X that down a little bit, maybe to there. And then we're just going to mirror this using Machine Tools. Machine Tools is free, so it's not a paid for add-on. Just go and get it. There's a link in the description. I'm going to Shift Alt and X, and then just drag there, and we've mirrored that across. So this is going to be our interesting little slight flourish to our object, and it adds a minor point of interest. So I'm going to click there, shift click there on our central wider part that we made, Control and minus to use ball tools, and then we've got that. And I think you'll agree that looks much more interesting to have that there. Though I do think this does need scaling down slightly. So let's just S and then Shift and X. In fact, let's come into side view so we can see what this is doing. So I'm going to S, which would scale down everywhere, but I'm going to press Shift and X. So it's not scaling on the X axis. We'll go to about there. Yeah, that's nice. Now, I do want some sort of generator on the back here, which is going to be powering this device. So this is going to need some extra space. So what I'm going to do is click on this object, come into my modifier panel where we've got our mirror modifier that was set up by Machine Tools. I'm just going to apply this, so now I can go into vertex mode and select everything. So X-ray mode, select that, and then G, and then X that down. So we've got these slightly offset from each other, but they're still exactly the same in terms of the angles on this bevel. So that should look really nice. It mirrors quite nicely. So it's H to hide that. So now we've got a little bit more of a gap here, but I still think we need these a little bit thinner for what I'm going to do next. So I'm actually going to select that, go into vertex mode, A to select everything, S, and then I think we want this a little bit thinner on the y-axis. So let's just go to about there, which is giving us a bit more of a gap there. And the reason I want to do that is that we are going to select these objects and duplicate them. So what I'm actually going to do is select all of these. Let's make sure the transform point is back to the 3D cursor. Alt and D again, so that they are linked. R, and then 45 degrees. And now this is a really clever trick that we need to be aware of. So I don't want these to be the same size. I want these being smaller. And it's important that you understand the linked objects. If I go into vertex mode or any edit mode and start moving these around, they are all linked together. But what I can do is select these. Notice not in edit mode, S and then Shift and X, and I can scale these down so they're going to be somewhere about there maybe. Yeah, that looks quite good. No, maybe not as much. S, Shift and X again. Let's go with about there. But importantly, you'll notice that this hasn't scaled down the other ones because we are not in edit mode. But I could still come in here if I wanted to, and let's say select that face, and then G and Z, and it will still affect all of them. So we've kept them linked while modifying the size of some of them. So a really nice little tip there. Now let's have a look at this. I think we do want these actually to be slightly thinner as well. So let's just select those. I'm going to go to individual origins, and then S, and then we want this on the y-axis, but on their individual y-axis, so I'm going to press Y twice, and then again, I can just change this so they're a little bit thinner. There we go. So this use of the transform menu, but also linking your objects together is really powerful, and it's a nice alternative to using something like a radial array, which you can get in hard ops. And admittedly, it is going to save you a lot of time. Just to sort of demonstrate that, let's just H to hide these. And instead of the copying, what you can do is just click, shift click, Q, and then go to mesh tools and then radial array. Shift click on that, and then I'm going to scroll down to, let's say, 4, and you're done. So it's really, really quick to do. Anyway, let's bring those back. So radial arrays are fantastic. Right, what do we need now? I think we need the power unit on the back, and I want to make the handle a bit more interesting. In fact, I feel like the handle's looking a little short. I'll consider that for a bit and come back to it. Let's make this power unit. So mesh, cube, we'll start with our cube and bring it to where it needs to be. Let's S and Z to make it a little bit thinner. We'll go with somewhere here. S and then X to, we'll do there. So I want just a little bit of a gap between each part. Maybe that needs a little bit more to it. Let's just come into here, and we're going to find where the Boolean object is. So it's cube 07. Again, hard dots makes this so much faster. Just Q, ever scroll and find it and click. But without hard dots, we're not going to be able to do that. So let's just H. So come here. Cube 07, so let's find Cube 07, make it visible, and then once again, I'm going to go into vertex mode, and then just G, and then X that back a little bit further. So we've got a nice space for our power unit, and let's H to hide that. Let's move that a little bit across, and let's deal with the size of this. So I think we want this going all the way in. Do I want to keep this separated? So I'm debating whether I do that, and it perfectly goes into the handle, or if we keep it so that it has something where it's a little bit separated. I think I like it going into the handle, so we're going to go with there, or at least this wider part. It makes it look like this whole section here is sort of some connected mechanism. That's the part that gets energized, so we'll stick with that. Let's just G and then Z that down a little bit there. Might come back and change that, and then I'm going to Control and A. We've got the scale being messed up, so Control and A and apply the scale. I'm going to go into edge mode, and then let's bevel that edge one as well. I'm going to Control and B, go all the way down to 1. There, I might actually just G that up a little bit, and then we're going to select this edge here, Control and B those. And I think we've got a quite interesting looking chamfer there, and it flows quite nicely with this shape. In fact, what I do want to do is maybe try to match this angle a little bit better. So let's go into edge mode, select those edges, and at least let's have a look at what that looks like. So let's G and then X that down, try to match that angle there. No, I actually think that looks worse. And normally I like to match angles. We'll go with there. Maybe I could actually just change the angle of these entirely. I think we'll leave it for now. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to make this have some sort of power units. And we're just going to make these have some sort of venting of where this is being generated. And that's going to produce heat, assumedly. So what I'm going to do is bring in a new cube. Again, vastly faster with Box Cutter. If you want to have a look at Box Cutter, there's a link in the description to a playlist on that. Let's make that wider on the y-axis. Let's S and then X that to make that thinner there. I think we're going somewhere about here. Yeah, let's go with that. And then I'm going to Control and A and apply the scale. Go into edge mode, select those edges, Control and B to bevel them, scroll up. Go with somewhere like 8. Don't think we need more than that. C, so that they're clamped. And then we've got this nice round edge. Now this does have the problem that we've got a vertex here that's on top of each other. So we need to fix that. So with machine tools, you can just press 3, and that's going to remove all of those vertices. As long as, if I just come to my edit, preferences, add-ons, machine tools, you need to make sure that you've got that quick geometry clean for that to work. Otherwise you can merge by distance. It's just vastly quicker to hit 3. So yeah, I think there will do. We can always move this around. So what I'm going to do is add modifier and array. Again, faster with hard ops. Crank that up a bit. Go 3 to about there. That looks good. And then I'm going to click on this and I'm going to shift and no, actually before I do that, let's shift and S and move the origin to the geometry. I'm not sure that's going to help that much anyway, but actually let's shift and D to duplicate this. And then what we're going to do, let's isolate this. So notice actually we've got a duplicate on top of each other. There's a reason for it. So I'm going to remember that this is cube 16. Let's H to hide that. And then we're going to select these and this Control and minus. So we've got those cutting through there. And then I'm going to bring back my cube 16. And then we can select that. And if I just S to scale that down slightly, we get this nice inset appearance. So we can do that without needing an inset tool. Let's go with that, I think. That should look fairly decent. But I don't want this going all the way across. Obviously it could do, but what I want to do is actually reinstate these middle sections that are here. Now, we could start fiddling around with this and it could take a lot of time. It's actually a lot easier if we just realize that the things that are cutting this away are the cutters. So if we didn't have a cutter in the middle, then that wouldn't happen. So let's Shift and A, Mesh and Cube, G, and then X that up. So let's say here, let's S, and scale that on a Y to how thin we want that to be. So let's say there, and then I can just S on the X, S on the Z, and then what I can do is remove this from the cutters. So click that, shift click the cutter, Control and minus, and then now the cutter's been cut out and we get that returned. So we get our vents now as HH on either side. Now I've just noticed we've got a slight problem here, so let's just G and then X that up to about there. There we go. And that's looking pretty swish. So we could obviously make these vents as big or as small as we wanted, and as many of them as we wanted. Oh, no, that's not going to work because we don't want that there. So let's just undo that. Let's just go into that face and then just G and then X that across. So there we go. So now we've got our power cell. I think this needs to come out a little bit further. So what I'm going to do is select both of those. And importantly, we're going to need to, if we notice G and Z that, it's going to do this and bring everything with it. I want these to move with our object. So what's sensible to do is click this and then that, Control and P, and then parent to object. And then we need to go and find our cutters. So we've got one cutter here. So let's select that and there, Control and P, and parent to our object. And we want our cutters there. So click there, Control and P, and parent to our object. Now we can just H this and H this, and anywhere we move this, all of the objects will move with it because it's been parented. So G and then Z that up a little bit. Let's go to about there. Yeah, happy with that. Right, so there we go. Pretty much done with our mace at this point. I'm quite happy with that for something that was relatively quick. I think we don't want this sticking out as far, so let's go into, in fact, let's just select both of these and go into vertex mode. Select those vertices, G and then X, and bring that back. I think there looks a bit nicer. And we definitely want a nicer handle to this. Now, at the moment, this is probably too dense to do what I want to do, which is to make a knurled handle. The sort of comfy handles that you get to hold that have got a little bit of texture to them. They might be slightly rubberized or something like that. So we want to add that in, but I don't want this many vertices or this many edges. So I'm just going to go to X-ray, select those edges, delete them. And then we've got a hole here that we want to get rid of. So still in edge mode, select there, just press F and then Control and X to make a nice flat face. And then same thing over here. So select F and then Control and X. And we still get those faces. In fact, I might just do that here as well. Control and X for that. This is for 3D printing, so I really don't care about add-ons, as you can probably tell from all of these shapes. And then I'm gonna go back into object mode, Shift and A, mesh, and then bring it in a cylinder. Now we're gonna want down the vertices on this 16, maybe 8. Now bear in mind this is going to be a 28mm model. I don't think any smaller than 8 is going to be visible. So let's just R that round, 90. Notice I'm viewing from the Y angle, so it's going to be perfectly on that. Or we could have just R and then Y and 90. So it just depends on if you're in view or not. And then let's just S and then X to make that bigger to about there. Cool, right, really happy with that. But we're going to have to solve some problems before we do this knurling. The first is that if we try to do this now, or what I'm going to do, it will go all the way down the handle, including this bit that's going into the cross guards or whatever you want to call this. So I don't want to affect those. So what I'm actually going to do is go into edge mode, Control and R, and then I'm just going to move that up to really close to that handle top. And then I'm going to do the same thing at the bottom. So we've now got these almost control edges that are saying, no, we don't want the knurling to go any further than that. I'm pretty sure that's how that's pronounced. If I'm getting that wrong, feel free to correct me, but I was told that you don't pronounce the K. So that was from previous videos. And then I'm going to Control and R, and I'm just going to scroll up until these points look approximately square. Like that's really off. Think about there. I'm not worried too much, but generally square. Now, for this to work, the scale needs to be correct. So again, Control and A and scale in object mode will fix that. And then I'm going to go back into face mode. I just want to select every single one of these faces. So just there. Now, this is where this is going to get smart. We're just going to press I to inset and then I again so it's inset individually, and probably just add a little bit of space between each of these and then click. Then I'm going to press I again and then hold down Control and I can bring this out. So finger off Control and I'm controlling how wide this top bit is. Back on Control, I can control the depth. So I reckon somewhere around there will look good. It's a little bit exaggerated. Do I like that? So I think, yeah, that looks about right. So that's our grip. It's a little bit exaggerated. Maybe it's too much. Okay, let's go back to that. So let's I and then Control and then a bit less. So maybe somewhere around there. Anyway, we're sticking with that for now because it needs to be slightly exaggerated to be seen. And maybe this is a little bit too thin. So let's click there. Let's have a look at it in the hand. No, maybe that looks about right. I think that looks okay. No, we'll stick with that. And then I think we want a bit of detail, let's say on these points. Let's see how this looks. So Shift and A, mesh, and bring in a quad sphere. I'm going to S to scale that down to somewhere where I want the rivet to be, probably about that size. Let's G to here. Let's Alt and D to duplicate that. And then X and bring that up here. And then exactly the same trick again. Select those two and then come to 3D cursor for the transform pivot point, Alt and D to keep them linked, R and then 90, and then Shift and R and then Shift and R, and I do actually think that sizing looks pretty good. Yeah, I'm happy with that, but because we used the linking, again, if I go into vertex mode, A, and then S, let's just shake that off, the 3D cursor to individual origins, I can scale everything up together. But I think that's pretty good for now. Maybe a rivet there. Yep, I think that's just something simple and it will look really nice. So that's G and then Y that there. And then add modifier and then mirror. Again, much faster with hard ops. We want that on the Y and we want to mirror this. There we go. Cool. So there we go. There is our mace. Now the only prerequisite of this competition is that everything needs to be Boolean together. So we do need to Boolean all these objects together, but that's a relatively simple task. So let's just apply that. So all we need to do is speed this up. So you can do this non-destructively if you want, where effectively I'd, let's say, click this, and then click that, and then Control and plus, and then let's change that union to exact, and then I need to come here and apply, and then hide it. Or we can just do things much faster, which is click there, and then there, Control Shift and plus, and it's Booleaned. Let's select that and that, Control Shift and plus. And I do like to do these generally one at a time, or at least only several at a time. If you try to do everything in one go, it has a tendency to cause problems. So let's just select this, and then there, Control Shift and plus. Oh, that didn't like that. So let's actually select that and then that. This is because I've parented them, and if I start merging this to this, the parent goes away. So let's Control Shift and plus there, then there. And then we just need to, let's select those four. So notice here's a really good trick for booleaning. There's going to be a little bit of interference. Actually, there shouldn't be because these don't touch. So actually I should be able to do these all at the same time. But if these were touching, let's say if this was a little wider, what you don't want to do is try and boolean all of these in one go with this central object. It will cause problems. So what you do, I'm going to put that back to how originally thin it was, is select all the ones. So these have very little interactions with each other. In fact, they do have an interaction if we see here in the middle. So maybe this isn't worth doing. What you do is select those two which don't interact, Control Shift and plus, then those, Control Shift and plus, and then the same on these opposite ones. So there we go. Everything's Boolean together. This is one object. It's all together. So that's perfect. It's all I need for the competition. This to be one solid piece. So there we have our sci-fi mace. And I think you'll agree, pretty effective for what doesn't take particularly long and without using any paid for add-ons, though obviously the paid for add-ons would have sped that up considerably. If you do want this, as always, this file will be on the Patreon, so you can grab that if you want some maces for your heavy armoured sci-fi soldiers. And if you're interested in that competition, I look forward to seeing you on the Patreon, where you'll also get access to the Discord, and I'm sure there'll be some nice competition chat going on in that Discord channel as well. Have a great day, guys.